Hello everybody and welcome to the Hidden Breach. My name is Hagen, also known as Geist, and I'll be taking a look at the November 2022 Malifaux 3rd edition Errata that has dropped last Wednesday. I'm super excited for this Errata as this is 3 months before I actually expected it, and it is what we were wishing for all year long when we were talking about what we would like to change. And overall I think Wyrd has again made a great job of this Errata. Most of the changes are spot on. This is a great improvement. I will go through it step by step, take a look at the cards, what has changed, also give you my opinion of what those changes mean for the game. Now before we jump right in, if you like this video, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, check out our latest battle report. And as this is enough of the blathering, let's get on with it. Arcanists. Mei Fang Foreman. Front of card, Heated Iron has got changed into an aura ability. As per usual, I approve of anything changed into an aura ability because it needs line of sight that way, and if you need line of sight you need to have positioning, and thus you have to plan your moves ahead and you have to play well, so I think that's fine. At the back of the card we have the Workplace Efficiency trigger on Impromptu Invention changed to Friendly Foundry only. That's a rather big change. Firstly, you cannot use it on out-of-keyword models anymore, limiting your hiring choices when you plan ahead to doing this, and also you cannot do it on enemy models, so it's not a hidden obey with stat 7 against willpower anymore if you gain a RAM trigger by any chance. That's a straight up nerf. The late track bonus action has its target number and stat increased, so you need a 5 now instead of a 4. And also the defense duel has been lowered from a defense 13 to a defense 12 duel. I think that's a common theme we will be seeing. Target numbers are often a bit too low on the release of all models and will get adjusted later, so you at least have to go ahead and have a 5 and give your enemy a better chance to resisting the 2 damage and stunned. Steelcraft has been altered. You now have to remove 3 scrap markers within range 4 to summon a metal garment with slow into base contact with this model. I'm not entirely sure how necessary this is or not. The one game I played against Mei Fang, she was sitting within like 8 scrap markers, so it didn't really matter if she removed like 2 or 3. I think this is probably fine, although it's again a straight nerf. So overall Mei Fang has been adjusted a bit. I know that some people had success with it on bigger tournaments in America, although I think that was in conjunction with double master shenanigans, and overall she probably hasn't lost too much. The change puts her from the I don't know tier into the I don't know tier. General Arcanist changes. Legerdemain. What happens when 2 models with showmanship are in an opposed duel with each other? Nothing. They ignore it. Okay, that's fine. I think they probably have a smoke and talk about all the good tricks they can do. And next up we have, if an enemy model controls a witness model in a Damien Aspirant's crew, is the controlling player able to utilize witness the in-between? Yes, you are. So that means if you obey any model in a Damien Aspirant's crew, you can discard a card to cheat with 1 card of his configuration. Probably also means that Klaus Norwood as well as the operatives are able to use their infiltrator ability to also discard a card to cheat with his configuration, and that they're able to utilize Damien 2s so they can probably draw range and line of sight for their non-melee, non-aura abilities from any models with House of Soul and Damien himself. But that's only if you want to know your local Damien player, which you probably should do. So did I miss anything before everybody shouts Damien? Damien's not out long enough to be Errated, so nope. To be absolutely honest, I miss Sundeep too, but I think he is not mainstream enough to get nerfed and people don't realize what they got on their hands. Bayou. Ophelia Lacroix Overloaded. On the front of the card, Gimme That Bag got changed. So after another friendly kin takes an action listed on an arsenal upgrade, it must discard that upgrade, period. It no longer gains focused. Hold These For Me has been changed. 2. A friendly kin within 2 of this model or a friendly young Lacroix may take a bonus action to attach an arsenal upgrade to any friendly kin within 2 of themselves. Other friendly kin ignore the bigger they are ability when taking actions listed on arsenal upgrades. I approve of that choice because when playing against Ophelia Lacroix Overloaded, one of the big things was that how crappy the minion was. It always had an awesome gun from the upgrade, most of the time having a better stat than you yourself, and afterward it gained focus to upgrade its more or less okay attack with focus, so that was really annoying. Back of the card, raiding operation has been changed. Target up to 3 friendly kin in range, increasing this action's target number by +2 for each targeted model. Each target may discard an attached arsenal upgrade to resolve one of the following effects. The effects did not change at all. You now have a targeting number, you now have a range of 12 inches, so you need line of sight, and for 3 models you need a 6 to get this off on 3 models. Also, all of these models don't get a focus anymore because they removed the front of card ability, so that's a straight up nerf. Was this at all necessary? I'm not 100% sure because I haven't played that many games against Ophelia. It was most of the time I got tabled at the end of turn 2 because all of her little minions had awesome weapons and I got set on fire, and then the tar bomb did like 6 damage and killed my master. Otherwise it seemed to be like one of the few powerhouses that Bayou had in a competitive scene, or that everyone was able to pull off most regularly. So I'm not sure. Ophelia also goes from the I don't know tier into the I don't know tier because I don't have enough experience to judge her. The Brewmaster Moonshiner is up next. Barroom Brawl has been changed to, after this model moves any model, it may lower the value of the poison condition of the moved model by 1 to have an enemy model in base contact with the moved model suffer 1 damage. Each enemy model can only suffer 1 damage this way per activation. So to be clear, not only do you have to be in base contact instead of within 1 inch of the model has to be moved by the Brewmaster. So any ability or action from the Brewmaster has to move that model to be at all able to do the ping damage. The change to Barroom Brawl, by the way, also means that if you move an enemy model with poison, you can lower the poison condition of that model to have another enemy model in base contact suffer 1 damage, which is hilarious. I'm fine with this because getting like 20 ping damage a turn was a bit much, and often people just threw the game in turn 2. Tipsy Slide has been changed to, during the start phase, choose up to 3 models with the poison condition within 8 inches. Push each chosen model a number of inches equal to half the value of their poison condition, to a maximum of 5 inches. So it has been changed from any model that suffers damage within aura 8 with the poison condition to up to 3 models with the poison condition within aura 8. Also, it's during the start phase. And that means that it now doesn't trigger anymore if a model takes damage from things like the Brewmaster's shockwave or from the catalyst ability, and it also means you have to choose 3 models, and it furthermore also means that you get to push it about the same distance. The back of the card. Another round has been changed to shockwave to willpower 14 poison +2. Push any models that fail to resist this shockwave up to 3 inches. Models can only be pushed this way once per turn. So everything stayed the same, apart from that you can now push models that fail this instead of that they resolve their poison condition as though it were the end phase. So another round triggers Barroom Brawl, only in another way now. The section that friendly Tri-Chi models may choose to fail this duel without flipping has been removed. This paragraph is now no longer necessary, as this now applies to every model when hit by a friendly shockwave. And Open the Gourd! Open the Gourd has been changed to target a non-hazardous marker of friendly Tri-Chi construct. Until the end phase, treat the area within aura 2 of the target as hazardous. Fine. This is fine, because why not make it until the end phase? That means that activation order is important, and if you want the hazardous aura, you have to activate Brewmaster first and cannot do whatever you want and have the hazardous aura up all the time. This is streamlining, and I think it's fair. Overall, was the change to Brewmaster necessary? Yes, the change to Brewmaster was very necessary, because the amount of ping damage it could do to your crew was very gross. Also, this was in combination with the fact that with the Shoujo Enforcer from the title box, you can print an insane amount of pass tokens, which most of the time means that the Brewmaster crew gets to do their whole turn 2 activations after all of your crew has activated. And that, in combination with all the ping damage, mostly meant that a lot of people that didn't know Brewmaster had to give up at the end of turn 2. They weren't in a position to get any points anymore, or were so disheartened they just gave up. And I think it's fine to remove negative play experience from this game. Tier-wise, I think this moves the Brewmaster Moonshiner from S tier if your enemy has never played this crew before to a solid A tier overall. It's still pretty strong, you get to do quite a lot of ping damage, but you now have to take some risks to do so. General bio changes from the FAQ. Rockhopper, abandoned machinery. To sum this up, yes, the Rockhopper can actually use that ability even if he is within aura 4 of himself. Lucky Emissary. If the Lucky Emissary uses the Steamroller action pushes through 3 ice pillar markers, does it suffer 2 damage? No, it does not. It doesn't kill itself by doing so. The Guild. And in case you missed him at Arcanists, here it is, Charles Hoffman, Inventor. Finally, he gets adjusted. Oh my god, I've been waiting for this moment for such a long time. But well, I digress. Front of card. Arc nodes has been changed to after deployment, create 4, etc. pp. The change is you don't get a shielded anymore from starting within aura 3 of a pylon marker. And if you gain a power token from the pylon marker, you cannot gain another power token from the power converter ability in the same activation. This is good because now you cannot stack shielded on top of your armor 3, making you theoretically invulnerable all the time, and also you don't get this absurd amount of positive flips to forgo the fact that you probably actually would need to spend AP or plan ahead or have the cards to hit anything. So I think that's a great change. Now we go to the back of the card. So the first magic that happens is Construction Claw. The melee attack has been changed to target suffers 2, 4, 5 damage, then place the target anywhere within 1 inch of its current position instead of within 2 inch of this model. So someone has woken up and thought, hey, maybe it's not good if we give Charles Hoffman a 2-inch melee attack with a basically inbuilt heave trigger. So fine. Now we come to Alternating Current, also known as the Death Laser. The Death Laser has been changed to being now a gun 12-inch action, and the maximum damage has been capped to +2, meaning that it now does only 3 irreducible damage instead of a maximum of 4 irreducible damage. Also, the power spike trigger has been changed to enemy only. Now overall, I approve of that being a gun action. That means he can't stand right in your face and laser you all day, so you can engage him a bit now. On the other hand, the action still combines 2 of the worst mechanics in Mali for 3rd edition, which is A, irreducible damage, and B, flat damage without needing to flip. Also, having bulldoze, I assume that most of the time a Charles Hoffman Inventor activation when in trouble now looks like I bulldoze, I do my bonus action, and I 2 times do Alternating Current. On the positive side, you now get the defense bonus from cover, which is great. Also, as we said before, he now has less access to unlimited positive flips all day. So yeah, it's a change in the right direction. I don't know if it is enough. I actually doubt it changes overly much. And the last thing that has been changed is security defenses has been changed from stat 7 to stat 5. So you now do not need a 3, you need a 5, and that's streamlining again. Creating the need to have cards that are probably higher than a 1 is a common theme in this errata, and I think it's the right way to go. So overall, was this change necessary? Yes, by God, it was necessary. Is it enough? I don't know, but I think now we have a slightly better chance. I like that you actually get to screw with him being able to do Alternating Current all day. I like that he cannot kidnap your models on a 2-inch melee anymore, and I like that he doesn't get access to cheap shielded for all his models, because that's like 8 points of damage reduction per turn over all his models, and that's that was ridiculous. I'm still no fan of this model design because of alternating current. I think if they would have changed it to something that actually requires a damage flip, so you can probably just black choke or something, then it would have been better in my opinion. But tier wise, this moves charts Hoffman Inventor, in my opinion, from the absolute S tier, I can play it against almost anything, to an absolute A+ tier, I can play it against almost anything. I don't think that's such a great change. Next up we have Lady Justice Death Touch. Front of card. As you can see, there's nearly all red on this card as I've marked out the changes, so let's go from top to bottom. Consecrated Ground. Friendly marshals may move through friendly coffin markers and ignore them when drawing sidelines to other models. Enemy models within 1 inch of friendly coffin markers cannot heal and are treated as undead. So in addition to the fact that you can walk through your own coffin markers, you can now ignore them when drawing sidelines, which is fine. You cannot box yourself in anymore and keep shooting all the bad undead that are standing next to the coffin. So that's actually a buff at this point, and probably the first real buff we are seeing. Next up, Kytheron's Sight has been changed into Beyond Time. This model may target buried models with this action, ignoring range and line of sight. So Kytheron's Sight would allow you the same, but in addition would allow you to not require line of sight to anything that you target on the table or buried. So that's a nerf that has been removed, and I think this is good because this didn't need positioning, this didn't need planning, and your opponent couldn't prevent you from doing stuff. Next change is the Marshal's Coffin. Once per activation, when a friendly marshal takes the pine box action, it may discard a card too, and so forth. So now it is discarding a card instead of suffering a damage to create a coffin marker when taking the pine box action. Also, the coffin marker now has to be within base contact of the enemy model, so the range has been reduced. I feel like this is a nerf because cards are a rarer resource to the Lady Justice crew or the Marshal crew overall than is health, because most models in this crew can regenerate health by killing stuff, and you can heal stuff with Lady Justice Shockwave. And the last big thing is that regeneration 2+ has been removed from the card, so Lady Justice has no front of card healing ability, not even the one that all the others in her keyword have. That's interesting. So we have a strong nerf tendency on the front of the card, so let's go to the back of the card. There's a lot of red as well. First, the Entropic Depth gun action has been changed to stat 6 instead of 5 pause, and it now ignores line of sight. So this is the one action that still has the Kytheron Sight inbuilt. It now does 2, 3, 4 damage, ignoring hard to kill as before, but instead of gaining a positive flip against undead, it gives a target undead model the adversary marshal condition. So that is every undead model and every enemy model that is within 1 inch of one of your coffin markers. That gets an automatic adversary marshal to afterwards be shot to death by the lone marshal and all the other stuff you've brought. I think giving adversary is the one advantage this has over the melee action, because against buried models, unless they're undead, you would go ahead and use the sword because it has a better stat. And the crow's trigger also ignores hard to kill if you like. I think this is more a rework of the ability, and probably it's even a buff, because giving adversary feels much stronger than receiving a positive flip for a 2, 3, 4 damage attack. Next up, Ashwood Coffin is no longer a bonus action. It's now once per turn enemy only. Doesn't give injured +1, it now gives distracted +1. If the enemy model is unburied, it is now unburied in base contact with a friendly marshal or coffin marker within 3 inch of this model, instead of being unburied in base contact with a friendly marshal within 6 inch of this model. So your kidnap potential has been limited by 3 inches, which, given the fact that you're probably playing 33 and her placement aura, doesn't mean such a lot overall. It now has an inbuilt crow and gained a crow trigger that is named Second Chance. After resolving, if this action failed, take it again, targeting a different model, ignoring any once per restrictions. So if you fail your 3 will the size, for drawing black joker or your enemy drawing the red joker, you can just do it again and try to bury something else if you get something in range and line of sight. So the shockwave action Equilibrium has been changed into the bonus action. Its stat has been increased by 1, so you now only need a 5 instead of a 6. It's now shockwave 2, so you have a bigger range for all of your effects on this action. And the forced burial has been exchanged for a search trigger. So instead of burying another model, you have the chance to now draw a card, which is, of course, what you wanted all along, right? No, seriously, I think this is a great change. Equilibrium enabled Lady Justice Death Touch to heal herself and another model by like 6 per activation. Forced Burial gave her the opportunity to kidnap 2 models per turn in conjunction with a bonus action that she could take anyway, and I think this is limiting her potential somewhat. Burial Rites also has been changed. Once per turn is the same, but this model may choose to treat this action as a bonus action. So this is actually a pretty significant buff, because this enables your turn 1 to be much better than it used to be. Because in turn 1 you seldom now want to throw a shockwave, because you cannot kidnap something with your shockwave. You probably want to draw a card, but what you really want is use your bonus action to give all of your 7 or 8 models focus +1 with a coffin marker that they can now, due to the change on the front of the card, ignore while moving. We had some buffs, we had some nerfs, we had some reworking. Overall, it's probably playing a little bit differently than before. You cannot play the hardcore kidnap game from behind a house anymore, but yeah, I think Lady Justice with Hard to Wound and probably the staple leadline code is still tanky enough to just walk up to your crew and bury something with a now non-bonus Ashwood Coffin action, to then unbury it within base contact of the 3-inch away 33, who places it further back into its own crew. So the kidnap potential is still there. Was this change necessary? It probably was necessary, given the amount of changes on this card. I personally never had that much of an issue with Lady Justice Death Touched, and probably won't have more or less of an issue now, because really powerful, but it's in a way also really limited because of the keyword and the way the keyword works, and you have to just work around that. And yeah, one of your models will get kidnapped at some point, and that model is probably gone. Tier wise, I think this moves her from A tier to A tier. And if you're by now wondering why I don't rate the changes as great as you probably would have imagined them to be, I think the changes are good. I also think the Lady Justice change is good. I just don't think it changes her power level that drastically. It just makes a few things a bit fairer, but if you apply a good amount of time, skill and love into that keyword, you will get a great return. So onwards to general guild changes. Enraged by the Mage. If a Witchwing Thrall uses its Drawn to Pain defensive trigger to push towards an enemy, then uses Sonya's Enraged by the Mage ability to take a melee action, can that melee action declare triggers? Yes. Okay, probably to clarify that this is not an action that's generated through a trigger. Fine. Journalist. If a model takes the interact action while within 2 inches of a friendly model with the exclusive interview, does it still count as an enemy model for the purposes of that model's chaining story ability, if any? Yes. Exclusive interview makes the alignment of the model both friendly and enemy for the duration of the interact action, thus effects that resolve exclusively for enemies and for friendlies would both resolve, though the action is still only considered enemy controlled. If the model drops a marker, it is friendly to the player controlling it. So hurrah, if an enemy interacts within 2 inches of you, you will get the focus from chasing a story, because any further nerf to the Nelly crew would be rude. Family. If a family model drops its Vendetta target to half wounds during its activation, can that model reveal Vendetta and then use Upwell to have another model kill their Vendetta target and still score the reveal point? Yes, both the reveal of Vendetta and Upwell happen during step 3, etc. pp. Yeah, that's fair, that's according to the timing chart, and just a clarification. 7. If Dr. Watson, one of the new models from the new Madness of Malifaux, ends his activation, then uses Heat of Battle to take the assist action and gain fast from quick Cure, an ability on the front of the card, does that fast end then and there, or would it last until the end of his next activation? What if Dr. Watson already had fast on him before ending his activation? In this case, the fast would not last until his next activation. So some clever people have realized that they, rules as written, could give Dr. Watson fast via the heat of battle, and rules as written, this fast would last until his next activation. And this is a direct answer of Wyrd saying no. Which is fine, because I think that model is really powerful enough as it is. So, Guild, did I miss anybody? Yes, I missed Perdita, Neverborn Hunter, because a lot of her interactions with model like the Guild Mage, and also her summons and the auras you get from them, and all the focus stacking and healing you get is pretty gross, and I would have expected her rather than Lady Justice to be adjusted. Rejoice all you Guild players, you can keep your favorite toy. Neverborn. Despite the fact that everybody who's playing Neverborn insists that their faction needs a buff and all the other factions get all the good stuff and all the overpowered stuff, Neverborn have gotten an adjustment with Pandora Tyrantor, front of the card. The aspect of fortune has been changed to this model may add a positive to its defense duels and may cheat with the top card of its fate deck. So you now have a permanent positive flip on defense to a model that also has Luck Thief, so your enemy doesn't get positives, and if he misses you heal. That kinda seems like a buff to me. Don't know. Expose Fears, once per activation. After an enemy model within Aura 10 suffers damage from the Misery ability, move it up to 2 inches. So this is now once per activation, which is great, because if you happen to suffer damage more often from the Misery ability, you at least don't get kidnapped into the Pandora crew or completely ripped away from your position. That was quite annoying, and I think that's a good change. Also, Pandora gained the Heed No Fear ability. This model cannot gain the adversary condition. Now, for every one of you who is not aware of this, you could give the original Pandora Tyrantor on the left side adversary enemy with the Wicked Doll, making her absolutely unhittable. Due to the adversary condition were turned into negative flips, you had permanent negative flips against that. That has been changed. To be fair, the change to Expose Fears I like. The other two, I'm not sure if any of that was necessary. Yes, giving her adversary was a bit of a bummer when it happened, but to not have it happen, you had to remove a, I think, defense 3 health minion with like stealth as its only defensive option, which I most of the time managed to do. But well, I think some people were a bit bugged about this, hence the change. And then we go to the back of the card. No shelter here. One of the attack actions has been altered. Enemy only. Push the target up to 4 inches in any direction, ignoring other models. Until the end phase, enemy models other than the target treat the area within 2 inches of the target as hazardous. And before it was treat the area within 3 inches of the target as hazardous. Has been adjusted to 2 inches. I'm not absolutely sure why, because most hazardous auras like Jakuna's Drowning Aura is 3-inch range. Also, Jackdaw giving the enemy an upgrade that is permanent will give him a 3-inch hazardous aura. So I'm not sure why they adjusted it to 2 inches and what it shall change at all. As you have heard from what I've said before, I'm not convinced that this was at all necessary. I think it's fine. I don't think it makes her unplayable. Probably decreases her power level a bit. I think Pandora Tyrantor tier-wise is still, for me personally, an B+, A-, and as she was before, she has some very strong matchups, she has some very strong uses, and she has some very, very distinct weaknesses that can be abused and a lot of bad matchups. So I get that probably a lot of Neverborn players will complain about this, because this is removing one of the more powerful things they think they have. General Neverborn changes. Lucius Matheson, dishonorable. If Lucius uses down the wrong path on an enemy and the enemy model ends this move engaged by multiple elite or mimic models, do all of the engaging models make a melee action? No. No, you have to choose one. I think this was obvious, but obviously it had to be clarified anyway. Whoa. If a model gained the stun condition while within 6 inches of 3 different models with misery, does it suffer the effects of misery 3 times? No, it would only suffer the effects from misery once for each time it gains the specific condition while in range. Each model with misery can only affect a model gaining the condition once per activation. As misery is a Mei ability, the player controlling the models with misery may choose which model will affect the target for each condition gained. That's a clarification, and I think could be derived from the core rulebook and the section where it actually explained how auras work. 8. Marathon. That's the totem of our new friend Castore, the new Neverborn Resurrectionist master. How does Living Blade work with effects that would damage or heal it? If Marathon suffers blast damage, are the blast markers dropped? Answer: yes. If Marathon is attacked, damage is flipped as normal and any resulting blast markers are dropped. However, as it has no health to be lowered, no effects that depend upon Marathon being damaged would occur. Likewise, if Marathon is targeted by an action that heals, the healing is flipped as normal. However, as it has no health to increase, no effects that depend on Marathon being healed would occur. So to clarify it, Living Blade says that this model does not have health and cannot be damaged. So it's an undying blade that only dies if you kill Castor, the master. Otherwise, it flies around in your crew and hits stuff over the head, thusly healing Castori. Now you can blast off Marathon, which I think is fair. I don't know if this was clarified before or not, but I think that is a very worthwhile clarification, and I haven't thought about that before. Great stuff. Alright, it's Outcast time. And for the first time in this errata, we do not have a master, we have instead an enforcer. It's 33 from the title box that has been lately released, if at all. This was spoiled in some places because in some of the newer boxes there already was the errated card. Front of card, nothing has changed in comparison with the original book. 33 is still an 8-cost henchman with Incorporeal as well as Slippery, the From Nothing ability, the Beyond Time ability, and the 2 places at once aura and 8 health points, 5/5 stat movement 6. So front of card still checks out for a cost 8 model. And the back of the card, that's the big change. The Pine box is gone. So for everyone who didn't know that, you could take Terra 2, the title version, bury 33, unbury 33 within 6 inches of Terra, who got then moved by his own aura by 2 plus his base size, and then could charge something, and then could take the Pine box action and bury it, and afterwards could get placed back into your crew again, where the rewind action of Terra, and then you could very carefree kidnap enemy models and punch them to death while they were buried, or unbury them in your crew and punch them to death there. And there was some very silly interaction with the new cursed object strategy. You could unbury the model, give him all of your cursed objects token and bury him again, making it impossible for your opponent to score. So this is a great change. This has been removed from the game. Now 33 has a melee action that's called Torn into the Void, like the trigger on his original Pine box action. It is 6 against willpower, enemy only, target suffers 2, 3, 5 damage. If this model's final do total is at least 3 or more than the target's, it may place itself or the target within 1 inch of its current position. 1 inch doesn't seem to be much, but still keep in mind that it will apply its own aura and place the model, no matter if it's itself or the enemy model, a further 2 inches plus base size somewhere. It has Glimpse the Void as trigger and Slam the Coffin. Glimpse the Void, the standard take a target number 14 willpower duel or be buried, which is, I think, fair on such an attack on an 8 soulstone henchman and is in style, and you can still try to bury models if you have a tomes in hand. And the other is Slam the Coffin once per turn. Create a 50mm height 2 blocking destructible and impossible coffin marker into base contact with the target. Fine, definitely has more uses in the Lady Justice crew than in Terra's crew. To be absolutely fair, the Lost Peacebringer is still an absolutely great attack. It is a 12-inch gun, 6 versus defense, 2, 3, 5, you get a positive to duel or damage if you discard a pass token. And it has a trigger to place the model 6 inches from its location or ignore hard to kill, hard to wound, or demise. Oh, that's amazing. The demise ignore alone makes it worth hiring 33 a lot of the time. The other change is that the backtrack trigger on the bonus action A Year in a Minute has been adjusted to draw 2 non-Joker cards from this model's discard pile. So you cannot draw the black Joker over and over and over again, making it so you don't flip it the whole game, which I think is fine. It was slightly unfair. This is one of the very necessary changes to this game. It removes a negative play experience that people got when playing against Terra 2, and instead of the negative play experience they get from being buried and having no possible mode of retaliation, they will now probably finally get to see how you really play Terra 2. I now have to invest time and thought into this, which I think is fine and will be good for the game. General Outcast Changes. The Tormented. If a model gains an upgrade during the same activation it was damaged by a model with Torment, will the model with Torment draw a card at the end of the activation? Yes. At the end of a model with Torment ability activation, it checks all the models that damaged during that activation. If any models damaged currently have upgrade, the model with Torment will draw a card. I have a feeling that was errata before. I was pretty sure of that all along, but now it's been clarified. Great. Hamelin. If Hamelin uses Unclean Influence on 12 Mali 4 rats to make them each take an action, and the first Mali 4 rat uses Tangle Together to replace all 12 Mali 4 rats with a Rat King, would that Rat King resolve all 11 other generated actions? No. Generated actions are not considered lasting game effects, and step 4 of the replace rules does not apply them. Hooray, we have an official ruling to that. This is one thing that has been ruled in the Mali 4 Wyrd series to first be true. So you could make a Rat King that had 11 AP and would walk, charge, and then attack everything with Onslaught, doing 16 attacks, killing half of your crew, and then you could do it again in the next turn. This was bad for the game, as it broke the game completely, and it has been amended by the Mali 4 Wyrd series, now had been ruled by Wyrd. I'm very happy about this. This was stupid. Winged Plague. Does the Winged Plague give out blight tokens every time it ends a move, or only after ending the push from the plague spreads? And it has now been clarified that it only means the push from the plague spreads. There was a lot of discussion about this, because then you could just walk with the Winged Plague and give everyone unresisted blight tokens. This is no longer the case, and it's now clarified that this was rules as intended all along. So Outcasts, do I miss anyone? Having changed over to Outcasts again after a year, I think the roster is super strong. The only one I really miss is Fanchil. To be more precise, I miss the change to the interaction between Fanchil, his Freikorps engineers, and Yanlo, making you able to draw like 7 to 11 cards per turn, fixing the only weakness your keyword actually had. And I hope this will be addressed in a further FAQ in the future. Resurrectionists. Kirai Ankoku, Envoy of the Court. Now, this is one of the changes I was looking forward to, because my Kirai crew has not seen the table since Envoy of the Court was released, because I've played against it and then decided to not play it myself, because it was such a negative play experience and such a grind to play against that I didn't want to submit my peers to it. So let's jump into the changes front of the card. The Joiner's ability has been changed into the Chained Spirit ability. After any action which an enemy model within 8 inches is moved through by a friendly Urami model of cost 5 or more, if the enemy model has not failed a duel from Chained Spirit this turn, it must pass the target number 12 willpower duel, or this model may summon a Urami minion of cost 4 or less in base contact with it. If the summoned model does not have Mindless, it gains slow. Now, this is a very important change. So firstly, what has changed? You now need to be within 8 inches of the model you move through to summon something, which is great. So this will limit this somewhat. The model that moves through the enemy model has to have a cost of 5 or more. That is important because now you cannot use your summoned models to generate more summoned models, which was the main problem when playing against Envoy of the Court, because as soon as you failed 1 or 2 of the Join Us duels, you had like another 2 enslaved spirits who used their changing ability to move through further models, and you got more enslaved spirits who did the same. So yeah, that has been solved in a very elegant way, I feel like. Also, the target number of the willpower duel has been lowered to 12, so in most cases you now need a 7 instead of an 8, which is kind of nice. Next change on the front of the card is Revenge. It's now enemy models with adversary Urami within 8 inches suffer a negative to willpower duels generated by this model or friendly Ikirio models and actions targeting this model. Now, before it was suffer a negative to willpower duels and actions targeting this model. Now you only suffer the negative to willpower duel if you are attacked by Kirai, or if you have to make a willpower duel that is generated by Ikirio, which is only if you make a terrifying duel against Ikirio, or if you get attacked by her projected voice, which is good for you anyway, because in that case she's not hitting you for reducible damage in melee. So, jumping to the back of the card. Sundering attack action has been changed to target suffers 1, 2, 3 damage. When resolving, the target suffers +1 damage for each Urami minion engaging it, and the new thing is to a maximum of +2 damage. Before it wasn't capped, you would take 6, 7, 8 damage, whereas now the maximum is 3, 4, 5. I think this is a fair change. You have to keep in mind that she has, with Thirst for Vengeance, an action that can give you adversary on 7 versus willpower. After that, if you are within 8 inches of her, you get a negative flip if she attacks you with the Sundering. So being on negatives against 6 versus willpower and she hits you for 3, 4, 5 anyway, it's still a very, very powerful attack. Now the only change is that you cannot go above the standard 3, 4, 5. The second change is Vengeance Incarnate, the bonus action. Now the target number has been changed to a 14 crow, which means you need an 8 crow or higher to actually summon Ikirio with staggered into base contact with the target. Now, I think this is a fair change because every summon in the game, correct me if I'm wrong, needed a suit to go off. And I think an 8 is not too much to get back your 8 Soulstone totem, who has the Death Touch action. She comes into play with staggered. I think that doesn't matter because she has shrug off, and I mean it's in base contact with the target that you want to hit anyway, so staggered most of the time doesn't give you any disadvantage. So overall, these are fine changes. I'm very, very happy with that change. I think that's super spot on. Everything that was problematic about this has been addressed in a way without removing anything, so it's more or less still the same, now only in a fair way. For everyone who's like, oh no, now you cannot play it anymore, that's basically wrong. I played against Kirai and Koku, Envoy of the Court, one day after the FAQ release, and we used the new version, and I played a pool that was basically better for my crew, and I lost because I got pinned in my own table half. My opponent didn't get like 15 summons, she only got like 6 summons, but that's still enough and the crew is good enough. So the change, I think Kirai and Koku, Envoy of the Court, has been moved from the S tier negative play experience tier to the A tier where you can play it against almost everything. You still have to keep in mind that you have a high mobility crew and that you are able to move through almost anything with all of your models, so you have a great advantage on tables that field a lot of terrain or that sport a lot of hazardous terrain. So next up is a big one. It's Yanlo, the Spirit Walker, the bane of everyone who has ever played against him. I think this has been coming along and this was very necessary. I was a bit surprised about the size of this rework, so let's jump into it. Front of card. First thing we see is that his defense has been lowered from defense 6 to defense 5. That's very fair. Assassinate was almost impossible against Yanlo unless you got to isolate him, which basically meant killing his whole crew. Ancient Anchor has been changed to after deployment attach the Reliquary Yanlo upgrade to a friendly retainer minion or soul porter in play. After a friendly model with the Reliquary Yanlo upgrade ends a move from a general action. This model is placed within 1 inch of it. Whereas before it was after a friendly model with the Reliquary Yanlo upgrade ends a move, place this model within 3 inches of it. This is a significant change, because basically you had this upgrade on the Kumenu, who had take the hit, so whenever the Kumenu would take a hit on Yanlo, you place it into base contact with Yanlo, and then you could place Yanlo within 3 inches of it, getting him out of dodge most of the time. This is now no longer possible. It needs to be a walk or a charge action. or a disengage action. And you can only place Yanlo within 1 inch of the model that has the upgrade, which I think is a very fair change, making it so you can pin him down in some way. Also, they added the Soul Porter, so now it is a friendly retainer minion or Soul Porter in player, which I think is nice because the Soul Porter hadn't had much use in the Yanlo crew, and now it has a dedicated use. Now, Lingering Voice has been changed into when targeting friendly retainer models with Reliquary upgrades, this model's obey action ignores concealment and receives plus mask to its duel, whereas before it was the same but would give plus mask and tome to its duel. What does this mean? This means when you do an obey action on a friendly retainer with a Reliquary upgrade, you don't get the focus trigger automatically that you had before. Before you always did obey and the model got a focus, so it had a focus for the resulting action. Now that's no longer the case. I think this is good. The amount of positive flips the crew and the Comenus got was a bit too much. Then Clear the Path has been changed into a Spirit Guide. Once per activation, after a friendly retainer, minion or Soul Porter attaches the Reliquary upgrade, draw a card. Clear the Path was at the end of this model's activation. It may remove up to 2 markers within aura 3 to draw a card for each marker removed. This now means that his card draw is somewhat more limited, because there are only 4 ways for that to work. The first one is that you do the trigger on the Final Wishes ability. The second one is that you use the trigger on Chiaki's Spirit Flute ability. The third one is one of the models which has such an upgrade dies and another one attaches it. And the fourth is now you can use the A New Guardian ability that is on every Reliquary upgrade to give the Reliquary upgrade to another model, thus drawing your card. So you trade an AP to draw a card. It's something that will probably happen less and less, maybe even to a point where you don't draw a card at all. Yeah, everything we have seen on front of card is a straight up nerf. So let's jump to the back of the card. First thing, Twist Reality has the Hole in the World trigger removed and replaced with Knock Aside. Now this is a good change because I think that Hole in the World on a master that could use a Soulstone for the tome trigger and could choose which stat this action was resisted by was a bit too much. You've seen Yanlo actions where the Komino would walk forward, Yanlo would double twist reality with Hole in the World on one of your models, putting it like 12 plus twice its base side out of position and then just walk back so the Yanlo crew could kill your model. It was another kidnap mechanic, and another kidnap mechanic has been removed. You now have Knock Aside. You can still push the target 4 inches in any direction, so if you do it twice you can push it like 8 inches. I think this is fine, but a significant nerf nonetheless. Now on the obey action, the Spirit Guide trigger has been removed and replaced with the Preparations trigger. Target gains focused +1. That's in line with the front of the card change. You can now give focus to any model. You can give it to your ancestor models, you can give it to your out of keyword models, you can give it to enemy models who you obey. Only problem is, in that case you must spend a Soulstone for either Tomes or Mask to do so. This slightly upgrades the versatility of the Tomes trigger on the obey, but overall decreases the power level because the amount of focus you get from this is greatly reduced. The Final Wishes tactical action has its stat increased from 6 to 7 with inbuilt Crow, and its target number increased from 10 to 12. So you now need a 5, but you got the Guard Reliquary trigger inbuilt. And that's more of a rework, I think. Guard Reliquary has been changed to from within 6 inches in line of sight without a Reliquary upgrade to within pulse 8 without a Reliquary upgrade. So it now has a slightly higher range. Basically does the same. You don't have to Crow anymore. The Terrible Wish trigger has been changed to immediately the chosen model must either discard a card or gain Adversary Ancestor. I'm not super sure what this does. Please help me out if you got the idea what this is supposed to do. And then the bonus action, A Weary Road, has been changed into the bonus action, Choose a Path. It's 6 with target number 12, 6 and range has stayed the same. Friendly only. Move the target up to 3, then either drop a ski marker into base contact with the target or remove a marker in base contact with the target. You still have the move 3, drop a ski marker thing on any model. Only thing is now you need a 6 to pull it off, which is significant in comparison with not needing to flip anything, because not needing to flip anything is always great. You get the additional option to remove a marker in base contact with the target, so you get a bit of the marker removal back that you had on the original clear path front of the card ability. And before we sum up the changes, we have to look at the Reliquary Yanlo upgrade, because one of the changes is of course of the Reliquary Yanlo upgrades, and it's probably the most significant one in this whole change. It's the heavy burden ability has been added. This model ignores its empty vessel ability, if any. Now, the empty vessel ability would give the model positive to any duel it takes and add +2 to its movement stat. If Reliquary Yanlo is attached to the model, it's carrying now such a heavy burden that this is ignored. So you now don't have movement 7 Komanos that get positive flips to everything. You now have only movement 5 Komano that actually has a real problem if people put their mind to killing it. Also, the offensive capabilities have been greatly reduced. The next change on the upgrade is Release the Soul. After this model is killed, attach this upgrade to a friendly retainer minion or soul porter within 8 inches of a friendly Yanlo the Spirit Walker, whereas before it was after this model is killed, attach this upgrade to the closest friendly retainer minion in play. This is a gross change, because that means if the Reliquary Yanlo carrier dies and no other retainer minion or soul porter is within 8 inches of Yanlo, nobody gets the upgrade, and Yanlo is stranded with his epic move 2 in the middle of nowhere. And I think at this point the only option to give the Yanlo Reliquary upgrade to any model is via the Spirit Flute ability from Chiaki. That means you need to hire Chiaki and to have her within 4 inches of Yanlo and a friendly retainer minion or soul porter. So these two changes limit your mobility by a crucial amount, and at that point I am of the opinion that this change was probably a bit over the top. Yanlo for sure needed readjustment, but they really readjusted everything that was strong about him. I will hold my judgment until I've seen it on the table, but I think it now lacks a certain something, because either the oomph or the mobility or the marker removal should have been kept in a way that allows for easy play. Because think about that heavy burden. If you give the Reliquary Yanlo to a minion that already has another Reliquary, that minion loses the empty vessel ability immediately. So if you only have 2 minions and the Yanlo carrier dies, you automatically attach the Yanlo upgrade to the other minion who got the buff. Thereby it loses the buff, and thereby Yanlo gets bound to this minion, which is then again slow, which probably interferes with your game plan somewhat drastically. The only thing I'm really excited about is that you can now use the Soul Porter as a carrier for Yanlo's Reliquary, which I think is fun. Overall, this for sure will remove Yanlo from the S tier. I'm not sure where he lands. My assumption would be that he will land in like B+ tier, because all the changes make him very vulnerable. The changes to the within 8 inches restriction makes it also very fiddly placement wise. Now I'm a fan of placement, I'm a fan of sidelines and so on. Yeah, we'll have to see how this plays out. Maybe I will be proven wrong, but I think this is the biggest nerf we have seen in this whole errata so far. General Resurrectionist clarifications. Urami. Does the Vengeance ability resolve if a model uses Take the Hit or Protected abilities to change the target of an action to another model? No. If you do Take the Hit with Gwizin, or you do use Protected with Kirai 1 and put it on a Gwizin, then the attacking model does not suffer the 2 damage from Vengeance, because this would be grossly overpowered, and it's a good thing that this is not the case. This is in line with the Wyrd series ruling regarding the subject, and I think it's the only way to make this game playable at that point. Dr. McMorning Insanitary. What happens if Dr. McMorning uses his Reduce, Reuse, Recycle ability when a mindless zombie was removed as a corpse marker? If McMorning removes a ski marker, is the ski marker he drops friendly to McMorning. Mindless zombie would be killed by its Walking Dead ability removed from the table, and McMorning could either choose to draw a card or drop a single corpse marker. Since the ability states to drop the removed marker, if McMorning used the ability on a ski marker, the dropped marker would be an enemy ski marker. Yeah, that's an odd interaction. I think that's most of the time not beneficial to the McMorning player if you drop an enemy ski marker, but you can at least try to screw around with the ski marker positioning. There seemed to be a need for this to be clarified. The 10 Thunders. Nothing has been changed in regards to the 10 Thunders. No model has been changed, nothing has been FAQ'd. So the general assumption seems to be that 10 Thunders are fine. Do I miss anything about this? I think some models and some keywords could use a bit of love and slight buffs. I haven't played 10 Thunders as much as my other factions, so I'm not 100% sure, but statistics seem to imply that this could be a good idea, so probably and hopefully we will see this in the future. The Explorer Society, and this is what we have all been waiting for all year long. We got a rework of Nexus, one of many. Now, as an Explorer Society player, I have to say that we well deserve this change. It has been long overdue to balance the game. So, front of the card changes. First change is burrowed into the spine. It has been changed to, at the end of each activation, if an enemy model gained a parasite token that activation, one model with this ability may have it suffer 1 damage and may have a friendly Cadmus model within 4 of it heal 1. The change is A, the timing. It's at the end of an activation and not immediately after gaining the parasite token. And the second thing is that one model with this ability may have it suffer 1 damage. So this finally clarifies that it doesn't trigger like 3 times for each parasite token that a model gains the first time each activation. I think for me it was always that was rules as intended, but to have it clarified is good. Forced reaction has been changed to after an enemy model flips 1 or more cards as part of a duel, one model with this ability may remove a parasite token from the enemy model to reduce that model's duel total by 2. The change is that it before was after an enemy model cheats fate or chooses not to during a duel. So now it's in line with the cheat token ability from the monk keyword, and you have to choose directly after flipping cards if you want to remove a parasite token to lower the duel total by 2. I think this is fair. You have to invest before the enemy cheats, making the decision point actually mean something for you. Also, you can still, in a post duel, change the order in which the players have to cheat fate. So if you decide to reduce your enemy's duel total by 2 and that lowers his duel total below your duel total, he has to cheat first. And then many voices. If this model is this crew's leader, this crew may hire 2 additional nexus, one of many models, at cost 0. Additionally, shambling nests lose the totem nexus characteristic. And that straight up just means you don't get shambling nest totems if you play Nexus one of many. You only get them as totems if you play the original Nexus. I think this is fine. You still get 9 AP and 18 health if you play Nexus one of many, instead of 13 AP and 37 health as you got before. You're probably still AP wise at an advantage over your opponent anyway. And the last change is the health pool has been reduced from 7 to 6, which I think is fine. We go to the back of the card. Unassuming demeanor has stayed the same, and then we see the drain life action has lost a stat point. It's now stat 5 with inbuilt mask against willpower instead of stat 6. You get to do it 9 times anyway if all of your one of many live, so stat 5 is still average. You most of the time will be attacking against an even stat. The joiner's trigger on mask has been changed to once per turn, enemy only. Target gains a parasite token. Until the end phase after the target is killed, this model may remove all parasite tokens from it, minimum 1, to summon an eyes and ears into base contact with it. This now means that at the moment that model dies, you have to have a parasite token on it to summon an eyes and ears. You cannot like slap it once, give it 1 parasite token, and then kill it with the next attack, in which you use that parasite token to lower its duel total. Then more changes. Join the Hive has its stat upgraded to 6 and its target number upgraded to 6, so you now need a 6 instead of a 5 to pull it off. The action has stayed the same. Stat increase is always nice, so you now need actually higher cards to pull off all your actions. Playthings, target number stayed the same, but the action has been altered to push this model and up to 2 other friendly Cadmus models within range up to 2 inch in any direction. As before, it was any number of friendly Cadmus models within range. This was very powerful. You could shuffle your crew forward 6 inches in one activation if you just top decked it, and as you had like 3 models that could do it, you couldn't just afford to top deck it and cheat the occasional 6, moving a whole crew forward by 6 inches. I think this adjustment is fair. it's still quite a lot of movement. It's still an ability to get you out of engagement easily. And the biggest change on the back of the card is probably the Will of Many ability, I would say, which has its target number increased to a 12 from a 10. The action itself has stayed the same, but the secret mission trigger has been removed. You now need a 6 instead of a 4 to obey a friendly model within 12 inches, and this is in line with all other AP transfer actions that either need a 5 or a 6 in this game, and this is fair. I don't know why it needed a 4 beforehand. New model syndrome. And the secret mission trigger has been removed. That's good because it allowed you to make either your totems or your eyes and ears significant and until the start phase. So they were scoring significant models during the end phase and could score schemes like breakthrough, or your totems could pick up strategy markers and symbols of authority and such nonsense. And it was a bit strong, and all you needed is like the 4 of rams in case you didn't want to spend a soulstone. Now to sum up all of these changes are a straight up nerf, and this straight up nerf was very much needed. You now don't get as many models. The forced reaction is at a fair timing compared to what it was before. You have less health, so your stuff is more squishy now. You have a stat 5 on drain life, which is fine because it's the same stat as the unassuming demeanor. I think it's a fair stat to have on 3 models you get for free at the start of the game. And you now need a 6 to obey stuff. Of course, this lowers the power level of this crew, but it was really needed. I played a lot of games with Nexus One of Many, to my embarrassment. Nexus One of Many it made it so you did not have to play well. You could play sloppy because you had such a high amount of AP and such a lot of variety where you can apply that AP on the table, and it made it so you would win games against players that were actually playing better than you are, and you won games against players that straight up were better than you were. So is this change enough? I think it's a good change. I think Nexus One of Many is still very strong. Probably not S tier anymore, but it's AA+. And I think it's more in line with the original Nexus, which got nerfed in the last FAQ, but is also still very, very strong. I'm very happy about this change. I don't think I will be playing Nexus One of Many anymore because still got to get over the feeling of giving most of my enemies a negative play experience to be willing to try that again, so I will be probably trying Nexus one more. Next up we got the other one that was long overdue, which is Maxine Agass's Monomaniacal. Now Monomaniacal's ability to heal the whole crew while doing absurd amounts of damage while handing out injured was a huge problem, and it has now somewhat been adjusted. So let's jump to the top of the card. Top of the card, Breach Burnt has been adjusted too, after friendly EVS model either discards from its fate deck or cheats fate with a card matching its reconfigure ability. It may have a friendly EVS model within aura 6 of it heal 1. Models cannot heal this way more than once per activation. So the only change is that it's now restricted to once per activation per model. You cannot like heal Errata by 5 health if you accidentally discard 5 tomes by doing calculated possibilities. But you still get to heal 5 different models if you accidentally discard 5 tomes with calculated possibilities. So yeah, I mean, it is at least something. I would have wished for it to be within 6 inches of Maxine only, so you have to like bubble up and make yourself more vulnerable to stuff. I dislike that it is just a global ability, so that Calypso can solo scheme run on one flank and heal himself once in his own and once in Dr. Beep's activation. That most of the time will probably still be too much on an Armor 2 model. Going to the back of the card, and this is where the magic happens, I guess. The Etheric tier has been altered to Melee 2, Stat 5, resisted by movement. Target suffers 2/3/5 damage and gains staggered. Instead, before it was Stat 6 versus willpower, and target gains 2/3/5 damage and gains injured +1. Okay, so the first importance of that is cannot put your opponent on negatives against your melee action anymore by putting Errata within 2 inches of him. You cannot stack injured anymore by hitting him repeatedly while he's on negatives. Stat 5 against movement is actually most of the time an even stat attack against 6 versus willpower, which actually was attacking most of the time with a better stat. So that's a straight up nerf. Now, the attack gives staggered, so once you manage to hit, the next hit will get easier. So you're probably not reliant on Errata anymore. You just go in with Maxine and something else and try to land the one hit against movement, which any 13 should provide you with, and after that you have free reign hitting against a stat that is -2. Also, I feel you get very great stagger synergies in the keyword itself. You have the Tide Caller, who has spread it around as a trigger on his melee action. You have Bo Fishbocker's melee action that hands out staggered automatically. You can hire Vernon Wells as a versatile, give staggered 6 against willpower on a ranged attack, and you could actually go and out of keyword hire Eclipse's Core, who has a staggered trigger on a shooting attack. So there are so many ways to set up this melee attack that I don't think it will make you sad for a long time. I think this is still a great change, because now you will not get the ability to cheat the damage flip as often as you had before. Before you could very often cheat severe 2 times in an activation, and with the Mass of Tentacles triggers in addition do like 17 damage. And I think this is now over. Next change is Split Across Worlds. The target gains staggered until the end phase. The target cannot heal. Additionally, once per activation after model within aura 2 of the target heals, the target suffers 1 damage. I'm a bit confused why this now gives staggered, because the action, to be absolutely fair, was very good before it gave staggered to your opponent. I mean, your opponent cannot heal. Some models, like models with Demise Eternal or any Demise that relies on healing, or the model you have Vendetta or Assassinate on that you can then reliably put below half of its health without it having any chance to heal up again. It was very strong. So now it also gives staggered, buffing your melee attack. So yeah, probably now a Maxine Agassiz monomaniacal standard activation looks like 2 Split Across Worlds against something. If you hit, you go Converging Ley Lines, place yourself next to the target and hit it twice with Etheric Tear. And that will put a lot of pressure on your opponent to move that model out of combat, because it will probably be close to being killed anyway, and you cannot heal it anymore. Now, next change, Converging Ley Lines has its target number changed up to a 13. So you now need a 7 instead of a 5 to pull off Converging Ley Lines. Also, it's now Shockwave 2 Willpower 13. So every model, the Willpower duel has been lowered by 1. Place any models that fail to resist this Shockwave anywhere within 2 of the Shockwave marker EV. And what has been removed is EVS models may choose to fail this duel. This is in line with the change we talk about later, because you can now do it on any Shockwave. I think this change is fine. If you're standing on the center line, you still need only a 5. Also, you probably have a tome anyway. Like 50% of the time you like to have the trigger to remove a condition from models. Willpower 13 is also better than Willpower 14, because Willpower 14 mostly means you need a 9, whereas Willpower 13 means you need an 8. With the later clarification, the Shockwave has become stronger than before, but we will talk about that when we get to that change. So the overall change is, I think, only a slight nerf. It removes the problematic thing of you being able to kill any model within 1 activation, which is good. But I still think it is very, very strong, and probably just moves her from S tier to A+ tier. I like the back of the card changes. Apart from Split Across the Worlds giving stagger to models, I would have liked to have Breach Burned actually nerfed more. General Explorer Society changes. Seeker. If a model that has full health heals, does it trigger the chronicle abilities of models around it? No, chronicle abilities only resolve after models heal. Step 6 of heal timing, page 25, which is skipped if the healed model is already at its maximum health. Think that's no change, but yeah, clarifies heal and would heal. That's why they put that in. Same thing with this change. If you use We Are Legion, you cannot give a heal to, you cannot pass on a heal from a model that is at full health. It actually has to be below full health to be able to heal and pass on 1 point of healing to another model with We Are Legion. Explosive turn of events. If an enemy model is within pulse 3 of multiple selected markers, would the model take the duel multiple times? No, it's not that good. It still is only very average. Then addressing bygone. If a bygone model is controlled by an obey action such as obey, does the controlled model continue to be affected by its owner's ideal upgrade? And that is in line with the clarification we've seen with the Damien crew. Yes, the model is still considered to be in its owner's crew and can use the trigger that is given to it by its owner's ideal upgrade. Explorer Society, did I miss anybody? I don't know if I miss McKay, because he has some strange interactions with the Intrepid Emissary and Botanists. To be honest, I miss Botanists a bit, because they have some very powerful interactions with Wastrel and Cadmus keywords, but maybe we will see a rework in the future. I'm not sure about this. Otherwise, probably Maxine 1 and both Jetsers are pretty powerful. I would like to hold my horses at this point and just play the faction without the two masters that got readjusted in this FAQ, standing out as much as they did, because this FAQ was very important for Explorer Society and very healthy to the faction in general. And now, as this video draws to a close, finally, we go to some general changes. Page 6, upgrade limitations in the rulebook, added 2 additional limitations, that's crew and double-sided, that's for the configuration, and the ideal upgrade that clarifies that whenever you hire a model from one of those crews and you have this single model, you get this upgrade, and it explains what a double-sided upgrade does. Great. Now, the next significant thing we're getting is the relenting paragraph. Relenting has been changed now. You can not only relent if a friendly model targets another friendly model with an attack action, you can now also relent any simple duel generated by another friendly model. So you now may choose to fail the duel, but do not flip any cards. The relenting model counts its final duel total as 0. Now, this is streamlining in line with the original abilities from the Brewmaster Moonshiner and Maxine Agasthis Monomaniacal, whose shockwaves had this paragraph inbuilt for your own models to be able to fail it automatically. Now models like Gibson DeWalt are very happy about this, because now his shockwave ability that gives Distracted 2 to everybody is actually useful, and you don't have to cheat your whole hand to get the benefits of that. So that's a huge buff to English Ivan, which I'm pretty happy about. There's probably a lot of other stuff. I mean, probably people are thinking that Rafkin is now worth taking, which I still don't think, but yeah. Other than that, you can now easily kill your own models on the corner with shockwaves in case that's a thing you want to do. And I think this makes kind of sense and makes the game a bit easier. I've thought long and hard about the downsides of this, if we will see something where it's problematic, because I think it will at some point give us a nasty shock, but I can't think of anything right now. So if you have an idea where this could become a problem, please leave a comment below the video. Next up, falling has been adjusted. If a model ever has less than 50% of its base supported by terrain or the table, that model falls and then continues any remaining portion of its movement as normal. So okay, now 50% of base must be supported. This is fine. This is in accordance with the Malifaux Wyrd series ruling we have seen before, and this is great. If a model falls and would end this fall overlapping another model or impassable terrain, it must continue its movement so that it does not end overlapping a model or impassable terrain. If a model does not have enough movement to do so, then it will not fall from the initial terrain and instead stops moving with 50% of its base still supported by the initial terrain. So you cannot use falling to skip over models and thereby extend the range of your movement. Friendly and enemy control has now a new paragraph, which is: additionally, if a model is ever resisting an opposed duel, the model is always controlled by its owner. I think this aims at the thing where you obey a model with like Zoraida and take a disengage action from a model like Hinamatsu, who has the Wicked rule, who can then hit you. And until this clarification, the player controlling Zoraida would flip all the cards and could control how hard you fail the duel against Hinamatsu, who could then also do an onslaught trigger and hit you again, and so forth. And it was pretty gross. Now another synergy has been taken away from obey models. I think that this at this point was fine, because it always felt a bit iffy. Rounding. You always round up, except in the following cases: dividing movement distance, which is not rounded, determining if a model is at half or more less of a value, such as maximum health, which is not rounded. This is the significant change in contradiction to the Mali for Wyrd series, where this was rounded. So if you had like Vendetta on a 9 health model, you needed to bring it down to 5 health to score the reveal point of Vendetta. This overrules it. You now have to bring it down to 4 health to score Vendetta on this model. And the last thing is determining damage from falling, which is rounded down. This is nice, so you can jump off higher cliffs without immediately dying. The next thing I got is page 37, Aura Terrain, added new section. Some models in Malifaux can create terrain within an aura around themselves or another object through actions such as spread roots or vent steam, etc. These auras are treated as terrain for all purposes, and any model within that aura is treated as in base contact with that terrain. Yes, enter the grave goo. It's finally like I understood it to be. This is actually very surprising. It's easier to understand. It's probably the first thing you think when you read the Kurgan card, see the aura and think of the grave goo. Because what that means is that you turn the aura around the Kurgan into hazardous terrain, damage +1, poison +1. And while I originally thought this is right, this is in direct contradiction of the Mali for Wyrd series ruling, and at this point I have to have the back of the Wyrd series committee and say that their ruling made more sense game-wise, because this interaction is not good for the game and it's so immensely powerful that it will cause problems in the future. Also, this buffers the Jetsa crew by no small amount, creating another little problem. So I'm no fan. And the last change that we have is actually super significant. Page 42, Encounter Order, added new step E, choose deployment. This means that after you set up your encounter and the table, you now choose deployment zone. So the attacker chooses the deployment zone before you declare your masters and before you choose your crews. So you now actually have more information before taking that step, which I think is a very great help, as before you had to guess. Now this is public information. Only problem I see is if you want to set up crews for an encounter and you don't have the table set in real life and want to do it via the app 2 days in advance, this has now become a bit of a bother. But balance wise, it for sure is a good change. And page 42, Encounter Order, swapped steps 1, choose schemes, and J, deployment. So also what you do now is you deploy both of your crews and afterwards you chose schemes. They have adjusted this in the GG3 for some schemes where it made more sense to choose the targets of the scheme after deployment because you couldn't do it before, and now you just chose all your schemes after the deployment. So if your enemy out deploys you, you can adjust your scheme. You won't come in a position where your Vendetta model and the target of your Vendetta model are at the exact opposite sides of the table and you probably have no chance to score Vendetta at all. I think this is a fine change. This makes much more sense, makes it easier, and it's also easier to understand. And this concludes this video and this FAQ Errata review. I'm a huge fan. Although this probably didn't shine through all the way, I'm super thrilled that this Errata was released before next cycle. I wasn't expecting one before February, March, and I hope we will see more regular erratas in the future, because more regular erratas will be great for the game overall, for the competitive scene, and we probably don't have to live with such burdens as the Nexus kits for years to come anymore. Now, I still think that all the new masters should be played for a decent amount of time, like half a year, but I think half a year is probably enough to at least have an idea about what has to be changed and then go into FAQing stuff. If you like this video, leave us a like, subscribe to the channel, check out our latest battle report, and I'll be seeing you for future Tactica. Have a good one.